The heat wave has hit. You know, the heat wave is hit, and I also realized we haven't changed these for a while.
You want to change it?
What do we change? No.
Okay.
Right? It works right there.
Yeah, it actually works.
Because of grassroots. Okay, we're fine. We don't need to change it.
Well, welcome everyone to our weekly Unauthorized Caucus. I'm Joanna Spilger, and this is my colleague Ryan Height, and we are coming to you from the Phyllis Schlafly Center in Clayton, Missouri. And this week, we are going to be talking about the results from the midterm elections and what do we do now. We've been leading up to the midterm elections on Tuesday, just talking about how you can get involved, but there are stuff that you can do, that there's things you can do after the elections. It's not over. It's really just beginning.
Oh, yeah.
And so last week we highlighted a little bit of what we were going to talk about this week.
Yeah.
But if you're joining us, go on ahead and like and subscribe on YouTube. Leave a comment if you have any questions for us throughout this live stream. If you haven't shared our videos ever, go ahead and do that now. Share them with your friends and family. I think that especially I think a lot of them have been very helpful, but especially the last three. And this one should be very helpful as far as what to do next after the election on Tuesday.
Sure. And I'm sure that all of you have a lot of questions about what in the world is going on. What do we extrapolate from this? What happened to the red wave? Whose fault is it? I mean, I can safely say, first of all, go and subscribe right now to our email lists because there's a lot of that stuff that we are currently examining as well. And we'll talk about just a little bit of it here before we dive into kind of the action item that we wanted to leave everyone with today. But we will examine a couple of those things. And as always, I am loaded for bear here with a bunch of links that we're going to start dropping in as we move along, because there is quite a bit to talk about. But do subscribe to it, because us Midwesterners know notifications are helpful. Like for the weather right now, it's just gone nuts. We've gone super hot outside again for 2 days, and then it's going to get down to highs in the 30s over the weekend. You need to be subscribed to the weather so you know what's going on. Well, the bipolar political nature of America, probably you should want to keep a little bit of a finger on the pulse. So go ahead and like and subscribe, like she said, so you'll see everything that we're putting out, because we're still analyzing it as it comes down the pike at us here.
Definitely subscribe to our Wink emails, our daily What You Need to Know emails. If you didn't subscribe before today, email us, because I think that the one that was sent this morning will be very helpful. The subject line of it is "The Real Work Begins," and it talks about how the election results are still being tabulated. I want to make clear that the conclusion of Election Day does not mark the end of our responsibility as citizens. Now we must hold conservatives accountable for the promises they made on the campaign trail, and just give some links on how we can do that. So if you'd like to get that email, email us at info@phyllisschlafly.com. Again, info@phyllisschlafly.com. And I'll be sure to forward that to you today so you can catch up on some of those news. But yesterday, we actually had a press release go out that I think will be really beneficial to you. And also, Ed Martin had his Wink segment at the very beginning of his radio show every day. He has a What You Need to Know segment about how we are expecting a red tsunami on Tuesday, and we didn't get as much of a tsunami as we expected, but don't lose hope, because there are good things that happen on Tuesday. And our press release that went out yesterday, I thought it was excellent. It's titled "Midterm Results Far From Over, but the Lessons Learned Start Now." And it just talks about the things that were accomplished, because we did see good things accomplished on Tuesday. And Ed highlights that in his Wink segment as well. And Ryan's going to share those with you
I'm putting the link in right now. But I mean, if just what Joanna is saying, we covered a lot of things yesterday, because first of all, and I think that we kind of hit it first as we look at it, with the red wave, red tsunami. I think that overconfidence was abounding moving into this. And that wasn't just on the conservative side, on the Republican side of the equation. Democrats seemed very confident that they were going to get, take a beating on Tuesday. And they ended up not taking as much of a beating as was expected. But everyone thought that. The polling trend lines were there. So let this be a lesson to us all not to succumb to overconfidence or over worry and let that jump into the driver's seat, because the work continues till the polls close and then the counting begins, or in the case of, this week, counting continues for days and days and days, which is another thing that we talk about. You want to talk about the lessons learned. We can go into a couple of the victories here, but I think one of the chief lessons learned as we are continuing to watch and wait, which let me go ahead and drop this in. I've been following the Epoch Times and Newsmax both are running off of the same map. It seems to be quite a bit more updated than even Fox News, whatever that's worth anymore, as far as conservative news goes. But their maps are very interesting to look at. So if you want to look at the House, the Senate, the gubernatorial races, this is the map that I would recommend. It's got updates going. But why in the world? It's been 2 days. Why is Arizona still only at 77.86% in? Nevada is finally at 90.63% in. Georgia has been East Coast time. They closed, one of the first ones, and it still just says more than 95% in. Why in the world are we still counting? There are a lot of conservatives who've made a good point. One of the biggest problems that we're looking at, and this isn't an excuse or a blame, by the way, anything you hear us talk about, reality, we've lost election day and it's become election season. Not only do we, instead of just absentee voting for a couple of weeks before the election, if you're not going to be in town, you're working and can't get there, you have a reason, not like people are making you sign a legal affidavit. You say, I can't make it, I'm going to come in and vote a couple of weeks early. This is a whole lot different than universal mail-in voting 30 days before. And then we have created systems like, was it Pennsylvania, I think, that state law, they're not allowed to start counting the ballots or do anything with them until the polls close, and they've been receiving millions upon millions of ballots. If you're going to open up the system that greatly, we then need to adjust the system of counting so that it happens quickly, efficiently, and also in a secure manner. I saw the tweet came out from one of the Florida conservatives that said, we counted 7.5 million votes in 5 hours. Why in the world is Arizona still laboring over less than 2 million votes? Yeah. But really, it should not take this long. This is the kind of thing that ensures voters have lost confidence in the system. Even if you're not pulling any funny business behind closed doors for days and days after the election, it just doesn't smell good. It must be done quickly, efficiently, and that is what will restore the confidence of voters. So this whole season of elections, instead of election day and the results coming out that night, it's going to be a late night. It's going to be a week. It's going to be a month. That's what we were being told ahead of time. This should not be the American expectation for elections. That has to change. And sure enough, that's one of the things you look at. Again, not an excuse, but it's kind of interesting if you look over and realize, hey, a lot of the red wave type activities happened in states like Florida and like Missouri and some others that have solid election security laws. But in the blue states that have had all these problems that you do universal mail-in balloting, the red wave was nowhere to be found. It's interesting. I'm not trying to accuse anything or excuse anything, but that's very interesting to notice that the secure elections states did actually have quite a bit of a red wave, like Florida, historic gains overturning Democrat districts. And then in blue states, you didn't see it. That bears another look because something smells fishy about that. And again, we're back to election laws. This is one of the reasons it's so very important. It just really is. So that's something to consider. That's something to look. I'm going to catch up if you want to go on to the next. I'm catching up on a couple of things I see coming in here.
So just something that we wanted to highlight is what happened on election day, how we're still counting ballots, and how this needs to be accomplished quickly. I've heard people talk about how we could make it a national holiday and people could have the day off and go and vote. I do understand that sometimes people will need the options for absentee ballots and voting that way, and that is helpful, but it does make it difficult when we're still counting ballots and it's Thursday. Our election was Tuesday. But another topic that we wanted to discuss was what can you do now? Maybe you had someone win in your state that you weren't especially happy about. Well, what you can do is you can keep them accountable. And maybe you had someone win that you are very, very excited about. We had some great wins here in Missouri that we're very excited about, but we can still hold those men and women accountable because we need to. They are representing us and we the people. So they're representing you in your state too. So find their website, find a way to call them, to email them. Keep in contact with those who are still in office before they change over to those who have been elected this week. Let them hear your voice. And that's what you can do right now still.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say one of the interesting parts of this discussion, I'm typing here, and you handed it over to me too fast. You handed it over to me too fast. All right, if there's typos in it, it's her fault. So we know.
I just know he has a lot of thoughts on it.
I do.
Good.
Well, and this is interesting too, because this is one of the big things that there were two things that I remember very specifically when it came to politics and elections that Phyllis Schlafly drove home that I didn't see a lot of other people drive home as well. One of her first comments, first of all, everyone yells at the people who you think are doing the wrong thing. We call into the office, the angry calls, no, I want you to not vote this way on the blah, blah, blah. But who remembers to call into your representative's office and flood thousands of calls and say, thank you for this good vote. That is great. That's what we wanted you to do. You have to praise them when they do right, just as much as hold their feet to the fire when they do wrong. Everyone's really good at that in politics, but on the right-wing side too. Hold their feet to the fire when they're doing wrong or about to do wrong, or you don't want them to do wrong. But we have to praise the good guys when they do the right thing. You have to praise the people you don't like even when they do the right thing, so that they know that attaboy, that's what we want you to do. That's extremely important. But the other thing that Phyllis Schlafly always said that was, again, very unique, well, not very unique, but I didn't hear a whole lot of other conservatives at her level talking about it. Guys, election day, the electoral activity doesn't stop on election day. The electoral activity just begins, because you as the voter now have to hold them accountable. And the next election is really the ultimate threat of, if we don't like what you've done, you're out. We're going to do this again and find someone else. But you've got all this time leading up into it. It is time to start holding them accountable. It is time to start emailing your representative. It's time to start calling their office. It doesn't always have to be angry calls about something. It can be guiding and moving them in the right direction. Hey, this issue, I heard this issue is going to be coming up, and someone's going to introduce it. I would love for you to sign on as a co-sponsor. That's what I would like to see. You're my representative. I think you should sign on to this as a co-sponsor. Please read it and consider it. Reach out preemptively. Start moving toward them. And it kind of reminds me, this is some discussions I've had, including some of the thoughts of the state reps around me here in Missouri. There are two different forms, and here's a little nugget to chew on for the day that's a little beyond all of just the points that we go through typically. There's kind of two different groups or two different sides of thought that you can have when it comes to electoral representation, like we have here in this republic. There's the process of direct representation or a trusteeship. And what I mean by that, does a representative do what 51% of his district wants him to do, whether he thinks it's a good idea or not? Or do we, the people, elect this person as a trustee of our governmental responsibility, and we trust them to make the right decision? And if we don't agree with their decisions, our election is the time to change that in 2 years, 4 years, 6 years. That's really what I advocate more, because that otherwise it really becomes an excuse. I say, oh, well, I don't agree with this, but most of my district wants it, so I'm going to go ahead and vote for this new, redefinition of marriage. I'm going to go ahead and vote for this pro-abortion bill because the majority of my district wants it. Well, no, your job is to do what you think is best. That's why they sent you here. And if your district disagrees with your votes at the end of the term, they'll vote you out and find someone else who better represents their values. It's about representing the values of the district in that regard as a trustee, not just a direct representative. Again, I would advocate that's very much what we're supposed to do here. So if you're going to expect this person to be a good trustee of your values, your vote, your representation in whatever elected body it is, start to guide and massage that relationship. Don't always just call with anger or call when they did it right. Start preemptively moving them toward thinking about the things you want them to support. Now's the time to do that. So get familiar. Find out who won in your area. Keep an eye on it, because a lot of these, especially at the state level, they're not going to get sworn in until January. But then find out who's their legislative assistant. Do they have a district office? How can I go and start to build a relationship? Especially if you voted for this person, there's an automatic connection. Hey, I voted for you. I'm glad you're here. If you didn't vote for him, you can still start that. Hey, I didn't vote for you, but you know what? You're my representative now. I would like to build a relationship with you so that I can hopefully put stuff in front of you and kind of influence as to what everyone I know in your district, my folks are looking to see happen. And this doesn't take some sort of big activist network, high profile name, especially down at the local levels. These folks are responsive. If you take the time to reach out to them, especially if you're not just angry and yelling all the time, that is going to be well received. Having worked inside of political campaigns and government, it goes a long way. Phyllis Schlafly was absolutely right. You can build relationships and have influence and move people where they might not have gone. But if you don't reach out as the constituent, as the voter, you're never going to know. You won't see those things come to fruition. So now is the time. The real work begins, and it's the next electoral work, because again, that's kind of as the voter. Our ultimate threat is in 2 years or 4 years or 6 years. We're going to do this dance all over again. So you've got all these years to prove to us you represent our values. So now is the time for the real work to begin. No matter what happened on Tuesday, whether we loved it, whether it was a mixed bag, whether it was all good or all bad or somewhere in between, now is the time to start moving forward. So let us take this opportunity to encourage you all toward that.
And so again, what you can do right now is you can sign up for our daily wink emails. If you want to get the one that we sent out this morning, but you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and email info@phyllisschlafly.com and I will forward that email to you. Go ahead and check out that press release that Ryan left in the comments below. We're going to be sending out more of those over the next few weeks, just talking about the elections and keeping you informed on what's going on. And also, like Ryan and I have been discussing, whoever won in your state or district, go ahead and hold them accountable. Again, make sure they know where you believe, but also be an encouragement to them and make sure that you send as much negative feedback that you send back, you send some positive feedback too.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we'll just encourage you to drop a couple little things at the very end here. If you're still watching and looking at all of the numbers that are coming in, because again, it looks like we have flipped both the governor's and the Senate seat in Nevada. Nice. Unless something crazy happens, that's going to have flipped to Republicans. So at bare minimum, the loss in Pennsylvania is a wash. But it also looks like it is quite possible and likely at this point, with the number of ballots that are coming in, that an overturn of the current barely slim lead that Arizona Democrats have in the governor and the Senate race is about to overturn, especially on the governor's side. It looks like that's quite possible based on the number of ballots that are supposedly left. So if you're looking to keep following those numbers, Lauren Boebert, literally right before we went live, yes. Lauren Boebert barely took the lead in what we're talking, I mean, hundreds of thousands of votes, and they're separated by a few hundred. If you're following that stuff, there are two sources I have for you that, like them or dislike them, agree with their prognostications or not. They have connections. One of them is Jack Posobiec. He's on Twitter. He's on Telegram, the Human Events Daily podcast. Jack was a little, I would say, overconfident and got me hyped up because, again, the polling trends said what the polling trends said. But Jack knows people, and he has had information before it hits major news sources, even on the conservative side. Follow him. And also, there's a guy named Rich Barris. I apologize if I'm butchering that last name. He goes by the People's Pundit, at People's Pundit on Twitter. Again, this guy's had commentary and analysis that has been pretty spot on so far. So if you're looking to follow the numbers right now, just for the rest of this week, as especially Arizona and Nevada and a few places in Colorado are figured out, those are the two that I can tell you. So we've found some good information from them, and it has been pretty consistent over the last 48 hours. So if you're looking for a tip and trick there, check those two out.
Well, everyone, thank you so much for joining our weekly Unauthorized Caucus. We will see you again next week, same time, same place.